Good morning, everybody, and we are doing something that I haven't done before, which is really exciting. I am doing a bonus episode. This is the first week that I have put out 2 podcast episodes, but I just felt really compelled to create this episode all about overwhelm and how to deal with overwhelm when you are a business owner or a solopreneur. I've noticed that it's something that is being talked about more and more, which is fantastic because burnout, I think, used to almost be a bit of a badge of honor. Like, oh my God, I've done like X amount of hours this week and I'm just so exhausted because of all this work. And I think there's been a huge conversation shift or a shift in the conversation recently about how overwhelm and burnout and being burnt out shouldn't be worn as a badge of honor, and that you need to take the steps to look after yourself because there's no point putting yourself out of action for the sake of work. It doesn't matter if you're self-employed or you're employed by somebody else or whatever it is. It's, you've got to look after yourself and enjoy life. So on the topic of overwhelm, I was starting to feel really overwhelmed yesterday with the workload. So I decided to take a break, journal about it. And after I had journaled for a little bit, it kind of prompted the, this episode. So I grabbed my phone and I created a voice note. And then the voice note turned into a full-blown podcast episode. But because I created it on my phone, the audio quality was just awful, unfortunately. So I was not able to upload that as the podcast episode. So I've transcripted it and I am going to go through that transcript. So it's also a little bit different for this episode today because I'm actually going to be reading from a script. But it's because there was so much in there that I want to get over to you guys. But I did not want to give you a terrible audio. So let's jump into that. Hey there, I'm Verity Songon and this is the Confident CEO podcast, the show that takes you behind the scenes of starting and running your small or not so small business. We will cut through the misinformation and bad advice about starting and running a business and give you actionable tips and advice that you can implement to grow, scale and achieve your business goals. Let's dive in. So for this episode, I wanted to talk just a little bit about overwhelm and how you can feel incredibly overwhelmed when being a solopreneur. And I think it's actually quite timely. So I went to a talk a few weeks ago about dealing with burnout and overwhelmed and what have you. And it was run by the wonderful Julie Luscombe, who longtime listeners of the show will remember that I actually had Julie on the podcast earlier in the year. And we had a fantastic talk all about finding your tribe as a solopreneur. But this particular talk was all about burnout. And it was so interesting. It's going to be super relevant to what I'm talking about in the podcast. But just to kind of contextualize, I think dealing with overwhelm, it can be so challenging. And I was feeling incredibly overwhelmed yesterday. So last week was half term in the UK and we had the week off with the kids, which was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. We went to a local swimming pool, which is really cool. It's got like flumes and a wave machine and rides, which was great. The kids had never been there before, so it was great to be able to take them. We went to the Maritime Museum in Jersey, where it's just, if you're ever in Jersey, go to the Maritime Museum. I love it. It's so interactive, so much stuff to do, and that was absolutely brilliant. We had play dates, we went out to a tea party, there was just loads going on. It was fantastic, and I am so grateful that I got to spend the time with the girls in that respect. But from a business point of view, I then came back to my email inbox yesterday and it was just, it was rammed. The notifications on my social were just piling up. There was so much going on. It just felt pretty insane, really, and pretty overwhelming. And yesterday morning, whilst I was kind of, mentally making notes like, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, I also had a 9 a.m. meeting, which was in town, and that was absolutely fine. It was a client meeting. I get paid for it. It's part of my business and absolutely no problem with that. But that meeting then went on till, it was gone 11 by the time I got home. And anybody who knows me knows that I'm a morning person. I can work in the morning, I can work in the evening. The afternoon, I'm just a hot mess. It just does not work for me whatsoever. So by the time getting home at 11, I already knew that I was starting to mentally wind down, and I still had so much to do. So, started working on various bits and pieces, but it was just, yeah, the overwhelm was real there. So yeah, I am somebody who, I work best in the morning. I'm most active in the morning, and during lockdown and all the rest of that, I was the person who was waking up at, 6 a.m, sitting on my laptop, getting my emails done. People would be coming into opening up their laptops at like 9, 10 and being like, well, I've already got emails from you. And it's just because that is my best time of working, really. I can normally do late evening, as I said, if I'm not completely exhausted, but the afternoon is just not for me. It comes to like 1 in the afternoon, I'm like, oh, I can't do this anymore. So it's kind of challenging for me, because I'm that kind of person. As I said, I'd rock out of bed, get the laptop on and get working. But obviously when I have to get the kids to school, because sometimes I do the school run, I split it with my husband, so some days of the week I do the school run, other days he does. It just depends on our timetables and what have you. And then obviously when I had this meeting yesterday and I didn't get back till 11, for me that was kind of nearly game over for my working day, because by 11 to start working is not the best for me. So I then did a couple of hours and it was just intense. I did a podcast episode and put that up. I meant to actually edit next week's episode, but that's just going to have to wait, to be honest with you. And then I did the podcast. I did the graphics for the podcast. I did some videos on TikTok and some posts and bits and pieces for Instagram, got all that set up and posted. Then I had a mini meltdown because my TikTok is not doing anything whatsoever. And I was like, hang on a minute, Verity, come on. Pep talk. You literally launched this new account because it's the CEO account. It's the one for the Confident CEO product range. And I literally launched that account this week, and it is Wednesday. It was Wednesday when I recorded the voice note. It's actually Thursday now that I'm reading this. And so I had to do a little pep talk to myself and be like, come on, Verity, this is ridiculous. All these TikTok accounts that you are following with these goodness knows how many followers and all these views and what have you, they have been going for a good couple of years. So no wonder where they are with their subscribers and view counts and what have you. And you're trying to compare your year to my day 2, 3 or whatever on TikTok to these people's like year 2, 3, 4, whatever. It was a little bit ridiculous. And it's easy to get stuck down a rabbit hole of why am I not getting the views and all this kind of thing, and does the algorithm hate me? But no, the algorithm's still working my account out. It's still working out my whatever it is that the algorithm works out. And so I was like, come on, you need to just give it time and just work with it. Stop expecting overnight results, really. And, I think that can be really, really challenging. And the other thing, speaking of content creation, that I really, really want to do is a YouTube vlog. And I've kind of started this a little haphazardly and put some bits and pieces up. And again, I was like, oh my God, I'm not getting any traction, I'm not getting any views. But then I'm looking at the accounts that I follow, and I started noticing that actually, they may have thousands of views, they may have thousands of subscribers, but all of those have been going for at least 2 years. They've worked on their strategy. They didn't have overnight success. But I think sometimes we get so caught up in overnight successes and kind of wanting it to happen for us. So again, I was like, come on, Verity, you need to get out of your own head here and stop feeling so overwhelmed, bogged down with numbers. And I know I always go on and I always say to people, don't get bogged down by numbers, because it's much better to have 20 people that are listening to you and they are going to be potential customers and they are aligned people for your brand, than to have millions of people listen to you but nobody's, none of them are aligned with your business. No one's potentially gonna buy from you. But once you get in your head, it can be very, very debilitating almost. And so it's easy to get that sense of overwhelm, and that can be challenging to work through, really. And then I just started thinking, oh my gosh, I've got the launch of the journal happening this month. My lovely VA has had she's just had a family emergency, which is no fault of her own, obviously, sending her so much love and well wishes and her family. But it's one of those things. And I like to have a lot of plate spinning and all the rest of it, but yesterday it was just It was kind of a good thing when I looked at the clock and I had to go and do the school run, because it forced me away from the desk. It forced me to just move and do something else and refocus, because I just kind of needed to stop and get out of my head. And one thing that I did do before I went on the school run was I got my journal out. Obviously, it was the Confident CEO journal. I've got the proof copy, which is now turned into my copy that I'm writing in. And I started reflecting, because I was like, look, it's not useful for me to start working on other bits and pieces because I wanted to, and then, my to-do list is just so long. As I said, I had the editing for next week's podcast episode to do. I've got a couple of episodes to edit, actually. I've got another episode that I want to record, a solo episode, which needs to be done. I've got a whole social media plan that I need to write out, and I've got stuff for the stationery range to be working on, because the journal is going to be kind of the flagship product. And then I've got a planner which I'm working on, which is a business planner. I've got a manifestation planner that I'm working on. I've got a notebook, a social media planner. There's pens, there's stickers, so much. It's really super exciting. But, that's where I kind of need to look at all the balls that I'm juggling in the air. Remember, I'm only one person, and there's just so much that's going into the product range, which is so exciting. But I'm doing the website copy at the moment. I'm working on product photography, which the product photography is just been a mind-blowing journey. It's not as easy as just getting a camera out and taking photos with your phone, as I have quickly found out. And thank you so much to Krista Lynch, who, long-time listeners of the podcast, remember she came on the podcast a while ago to talk about setting achievable business goals. But she is also a professional photographer, so I've been having some great conversations with her about getting my photos kind of elevated to that next level, and really making them look as professional as possible. So thank you so much to her. She has been brilliant. And like I said, just doing copy for the website, putting some different things up just so there's placeholders on there. So I'm working on that. But actually, as I talk it through, I'm realizing just how much I've got going on and how much I'm working on. And sometimes you just need to reflect and see how far you've come, or what you've done to see how far you've come, I mean. So rather than just working on another project, like I said, that was just going to make me feel more overwhelmed. So I pulled out my journal and I started writing things down, and I went through the questions, because there's question prompts in the journal. I started going through the questions of how am I feeling? Well, actually, I was feeling pretty happy and contented, but I was also feeling overwhelmed. And those were important feelings to tap into. So, I kind of leaned into that, and then I wrote down my gratitude. So what was I grateful for? And, obviously I think that's really important, but also thinking, what was I proud of? What am I looking forward to today? So the next day. And once I wrote those points down, I then moved across to the free page and just started writing. And I actually found it quite amazing, the stuff that started coming out. I started to feel much calmer and much more in control of my to-do list, essentially, and also what I've got going on. But the biggest point that started coming up for me, and what I actually found myself writing, is, do I need to do everything? I've already mentioned YouTube, and I really want to do YouTube. I love the idea of doing YouTube and vlogs and all that kind of thing. And I actually quite enjoy it when I have done it, but only when I had the time for it. And that's kind of the point. I've got this podcast. I love my podcast. It is going nowhere. So don't panic. This is not me saying, it's the end of the podcast. I love this podcast, and I really I'm just excited how much it's grown this year. And I'm really excited to see how it continues to grow in 2023 as well. But the point is, I've got this podcast, I've got Instagram, I've got TikTok, and I also do some stuff on my blog from time to time. I've got this whole range coming out. I've also got the coaching. I've got so much, and I'm like, do I really need a YouTube channel? And the answer to that question I found was also another question. So do I need a YouTube channel? Well, the answer is no, but do I want a YouTube channel? And I think this is where I'm getting caught up with that, because yes, I do want a YouTube channel, and I can see how much potential there is for it being, kind of top of sales funnel point of view, brand awareness and what have you. But I also think it's one of those things that either I need more time to do it, because I need more time to edit, which would obviously be the cheapest solution, or I need to find the income or whatever to be able to get to the point where I film everything and then I give it to somebody else for them to be able to edit, upload, do the captions, hashtag research and all that kind of thing for me. And just do all those bits and pieces, because at the moment I'm just feeling like I'm stretching myself, and that's just not going to be productive, to me. And yeah, sometimes it's just stepping back and considering, what am I doing? Yes, these are the things that I want to do, but actually, are they needed specifically at this moment in time? Or can I build them into a longer term plan? Because it's also remembering that I only have 10 hours a week, which are completely child free during term time for me to get on with things. And don't get me wrong, I am so grateful for the fact of having the children around me. And, I made the conscious decision to leave my corporate job to be able to have the lifestyle that we now have. And it's something we wanted as a family. It's important to me personally, but also to us as a family. And so, like I said, I'm incredibly grateful that I've got the girls around. But doing this reflective exercise yesterday really made me realise that I do only have 10 hours of protected time, which, I don't have the children around. And don't get me wrong, I can do some bits and pieces whilst they are around, when they, nap times, watching TV, off playing by themselves, whatever it is. But like I said, only 10 hours, which are absolutely protected just for me in term time, for me to just get on with projects. And it's then that you start working backwards. I'm like, well, 10 hours, what can I realistically do and do well, rather than spreading myself so thin that I'm not actually doing well in any venture. So this kind of goes back to what I said right at the beginning about Julie Luscombe's talk, when she was talking about overwhelm and this idea of the cycle of control, or it might be the circle of control. I can't remember exactly. It's one of the two of them. But the point was, I'm going to call it the circle of control for the purpose of this podcast episode. And I'm 99% sure that's what it was called, but I'll make sure that it's actually written correctly in the show notes so that you can look it up later if you want to. And the idea is that, you put yourself in the middle and you're surrounded by all these things that you can control. And then there's another circle around that, and that's all the things that you can't control. So the things you can control are things like, I don't know, the food that you eat, the drinks that you drink, the things you watch on TV and that kind of thing. And then the things you can't control, things like, I don't know, world politics, the cost of petrol rising, the shop food increasing, food shop increasing, and, all those, just those the kind of things that you can't control. They might annoy you, but you can't control them. And this kind of got me thinking about my workload and this overwhelm and what have you. And actually, what can I control? And it came back to that point of, well, I can control the amount of work that I'm putting myself. So for example, with the YouTube channel, yes, it's something I want. And yes, it's something that, I need in the degree of a sales funnel, but can I control the overwhelm that I'm feeling through doing that project at the moment? And yes, I can control that feeling of overwhelm, because I can shelve that idea basically. And I'm not saying I'll never do YouTube. I'm not saying that, I might not put the odd video up here and there, but, all the editing, thumbnails, writing out descriptions, the hashtag research, everything, it's overwhelming for me at this point in time. And yeah, I completely understand why it's some people's full-time jobs to do their YouTube channel. Completely get it. But the overwhelm and having a YouTube channel, that is something that I can control. I might not like the solution, but the solution is just something needs to be put on hold for this point in time, until, I don't know, I've got a massive team, I'm bringing God knows how much money I can pay someone to do all my YouTube editing. Wouldn't that be amazing? But, it's just a thought process. And I think sometimes the point that I'm making is that when you get overwhelmed, it's important to divide things into two groups. What's overwhelming you? And then in the other group, or the circle or list, however you do it, it's what are those things that you feel you're being overwhelmed by that you can't control? Because those things, you've just got to figure out how you're going to let that go. Like I said, I can't control the fact that the price of food is rising. I can't control the fact that I don't know anything else going on in the world. But, what I can control is the amount of work that I'm taking on. And also I can control the amount of work that I'm taking on that is not directly income generating. And I think that's quite an important thing to consider, because, I've got the launch of the journals coming up. So that's going to be crazy. It is kind of crazy, but it's exciting and it's a lot that I need to do. So I just need to focus on that. And yes, there are competitors out there and people who are doing what feels like everything and all the things, but they're also, are they also in the same situation as me? Have they also got a family? Have they got more hours in the week that they can dedicate to it? Do they have, a team? You get my point. We're all different and we've all got different situations. And, that comes back to the whole comparison thing, the whole comparatonitis. But, that's a completely separate conversation for another podcast episode. But for now, what I'd really like you to do if you're dealing with overwhelm is just go and journal it out. I found that really, really helpful. Walk away from what you're doing. And again, I found that really helpful. And just doing the school run, yes, it's a bit of a mundane activity until I pick the kids up. Then it's an absolute joy because, see their smiles and I get to hear what's been going on in their days. But it just gets you moving and away from what you need to do. Even if you just go to the shops to buy some milk and bread, sometimes you just need that break. And on that note, I'm going to go make another cup of tea in a minute. Just moving away, it's important, and putting a pause on a task or a project, or even, kind of considering how do I need to reprioritize something that I'm working on. There's no shame in putting pauses on tasks, and it might be something that you're really passionate about. It might be really challenging to put a pause on something. But you need to prioritize yourself and you need to consider, is it worth burning out over this project? And is it worth getting into this state of complete overwhelm and potentially anxiety and what have you? Is it worth that? And the answer is probably no. When you take a step back, when you start writing things down, when you start journaling, it's probably the answer is most likely no. So on that note, I'm going to sign off for this episode. And actually, I would love it if you contact me on Instagram at @VeritySongon. I would love to know, how do you deal with overwhelm in your business? Reach out and let me know. And talking of Instagram and TikTok as well, just a little shameless plug. Go check out the confident_CEO. That's the confident_CEO on both TikTok and Instagram. I'll link those in the show notes. They are brand new accounts which have just been set up. So don't be put off by the low follow account or the lack of content on there. It's because, like I said, they've both only just been set up this week. So I'm working on the content plan and getting those promoted and out there, but they are the new accounts for the CEO journal and planner range. And I'd love to see you over there. And if you want more information about the launch, those are the places to be. But you can also go to theconfidentceo.store. Again, that'll be linked in the show notes, where you can enter your email address and get signed up for notification of the product launch there. So I'd love to see you in any of those places. But like I said, reach out at @VeritySongon on Instagram and let me know, how do you deal with overwhelm in your business? I'd love to get that conversation. Going and hear how you deal with things. And until next time, take care of yourself, journal things out, and just prioritize yourself, because the work will always be there for next time. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Confident CEO podcast. Before you go, I would absolutely be overjoyed if you could take just 2 minutes to leave me a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are a great way to tell Apple Podcasts how much you enjoyed the show, and it helps the algorithm to push out the podcast to more people, thereby helping us to help empower even more badass businesswomen to grow their inner CEO and grow to be the confident CEO of their business that they can be. I love to shout you out in your reviews as well. So you never know, you might be hearing your name on the podcast in the next episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.